The story opens with Ethan Torres reviewing schematics in his workshop on Concordia Station, a frontier settlement that serves as neutral ground between human and Kelthir space. He's a prosthetics engineer specializing in cross-species biomechanics, one of the few humans who understands both human and alien physiology well enough to create functional artificial limbs that work across different biological systems. Most of his clients are accident victims or laborers injured in industrial work. Today's referral is different. The file simply says, Commander Vela, Kelthir military, combat injuries, comprehensive lower limb replacement required. When Commander Vela enters his workshop, Ethan understands why the file was sparse on details. She's using a hover chair, her lower body covered by a military cape that can't quite hide the fact that her legs end mid-thigh. But it's her bearing that tells the real story. The rigid posture of someone who refuses to show weakness, the cold assessment in her amber eyes, the way her long ears are positioned in what Ethan has learned indicates defensive hostility. She's not here because she wants to be, she's here because someone made her come. You're the human prosthetics engineer, she states flatly, not a question. Commander Vela, Ethan confirms, gesturing to a diagnostic chair. If you'll allow me to run some scans, I can assess what kind of prosthetics would work best for your physiology and injury type. I don't need assessment, Vela says curtly. I need functional replacements. Military grade if possible. I've been to 4 Kelthir prosthetics specialists. All said the damage was too extensive, the nerve integration too compromised. I was told humans have different approaches. More. Aggressive reconstruction techniques. Ethan reviews her medical scans and understands why Kelthir specialists refuse the case. The injuries are catastrophic, not just lost limbs, but extensive nerve damage, compromised bone structure in what remains, significant scar tissue. The kind of injuries that usually end military careers and leave people in hover chairs permanently. The Kelthir specialists were right that standard approaches won't work, Ethan says carefully. But I've developed some hybrid techniques combining human neural interface technology with Kelthir biointegration principles. It would be experimental, painful, and there's no guarantee of full functionality. I don't need guarantees, Vela says. I need to stand again, to walk, to be something other than. She stops, her carefully controlled expression cracking slightly. Other than a broken relic of a war we lost. Ethan looks at her, really looks, and sees beyond the hostile commander to someone in profound pain that has nothing to do with physical injury. Why do you want to walk again? And I'm asking genuinely, not as a challenge. Because the process I'm describing will take months, will hurt more than anything you've experienced, and will require you to be vulnerable in ways military training probably didn't prepare you for. I need to know you're committed before we start. Vela is silent for a long moment. I was a combat commander, led forces in the border conflicts. I was feared, respected, effective. Her voice is carefully controlled, but something underneath is breaking. Then, the final engagement, artillery strike, woke up in a medical facility missing my legs and my purpose simultaneously. Because a commander who can't walk can't lead. A warrior who can't stand can't fight. I've been a decorative relic for 2 years, honored for past service but useless for present purpose. She meets his eyes with fierce intensity. I want to walk because the alternative is spending the rest of my very long life being something I was rather than something I am. And I would rather die than accept that. The reconstruction process takes 6 months and is every bit as difficult as Ethan warned. The prosthetics he designs aren't simple replacements. They're sophisticated biomechanical systems that integrate with Vela's remaining neural pathways, requiring surgery, extensive physical therapy, and constant adjustments as her body adapts to the foreign technology. Throughout this process, Vela is forced into vulnerability she hasn't experienced since childhood. She can't maintain her commander persona when she's relearning basic balance, when she falls during physical therapy, when the neural integration causes pain that leaves her gasping. Ethan sees her at her weakest, and that's terrifying for someone who built an identity on strength. But Ethan doesn't treat her weakness as failure. When she falls, He helps her up without pity or judgment. When the pain becomes overwhelming, he adjusts the neural interfaces without making her feel defective. When she's frustrated to tears by her body's refusal to cooperate, he reminds her that learning to walk with prosthetics is a process, not a test she can fail. "You're used to commanding," Ethan observes during one particularly difficult therapy session after Vela snaps at him in frustration. "Used to being obeyed, feared, respected. But your body doesn't respond to commands. It responds to patience and consistent effort." "I don't have patience," Vela says through gritted teeth, trying again to maintain balance on the new prosthetics. "I have discipline and determination. Patience is for those who aren't trying hard enough. Patience is for those who understand that some things can't be forced," Ethan corrects gently. "You can't intimidate your nervous system into integrating faster. You can't command your balance to improve through sheer will. You have to work with your body, not against it." Over months of this work, something shifts in their relationship. Vela begins to see Ethan not as a subordinate providing a service, but as a partner in her reconstruction. She learns his story, that he became a prosthetics engineer after his brother lost limbs in an industrial accident, and the available prosthetics were inadequate. That he views his work not as charity, but as restoration of choice and mobility. That he treats every client, regardless of species or status, with the same respect and commitment. And Ethan learns about Vela beyond her military identity. She was a musician before the war, played an instrument similar to Earth's violin. She wanted to teach before duty demanded she become a soldier. She carries guilt over orders she gave, people who died under her command, choices made in impossible situations. The war broke more than her legs. It broke her sense of who she was beyond the uniform. One day, about 5 months into the process, Vela manages to walk across Ethan's workshop without support. It's 10 steps, halting and uncertain, but it's walking. She reaches the opposite wall and stands there, her hand pressed against it for support, and starts crying, deep, wrenching sobs that seem to come from somewhere primal. Ethan gives her space but stays close. When she finally speaks, her voice is raw. "I thought I wanted to walk so I could be a commander again, so I could return to what I was. But standing here now, I realize that's not what I want at all. I want to walk so I can be something else. Something I was never allowed to be when I was defined by war and duty." "What do you want to be?" Ethan asks gently. "I don't know yet," Vela admits. "But I want the choice, and you gave me that. Not just new legs, you gave me the possibility of becoming someone beyond Commander Vela." The day Vela officially completes her prosthetic integration and is cleared for independent mobility is celebrated quietly. Just her and Ethan in the workshop where they spent 6 months of intense work. The prosthetics aren't military grade like she originally requested. They're better, more sophisticated, more responsive, more attuned to her specific physiology. They allow her to walk with increasing confidence, to eventually run, to move with a grace she thought she'd lost forever. But more importantly, they represent freedom. Freedom from the hover chair. Freedom from being defined by her injury. Freedom to choose what comes next instead of being trapped in what was. Vela makes an unexpected choice. She doesn't return to military service. Despite offers from Kael'thir Defense Forces eager to have a decorated commander back, she declines. Instead, she starts working with veterans' rehabilitation programs, using her experience to help other injured soldiers navigate the psychological and physical challenges of adapting to life after combat. She becomes an advocate for better prosthetic access across species lines, arguing that reconstruction technology shouldn't be limited by borders or military status. And she maintains a close relationship with Ethan, built on the foundation of those 6 months when she was vulnerable and he was patient. One evening, about a year after her prosthetics were completed, Vela and Ethan sit together in his workshop after hours. She's been teaching him about Kael'thir music, even brought in her old instrument to show him. "I want to thank you," Vela says, "and not just for the prosthetics, though obviously those changed everything. For seeing me when I couldn't see myself, for treating my vulnerability as part of healing rather than as weakness to be ashamed of." Ethan shakes his head. "You did the actual work. I just provided tools and guidance." You provided hope, Vela corrects. Every other specialist saw my injuries and saw impossibility. You saw challenge and possibility. You refused to accept that I was permanently broken. She's quiet for a moment. And more than that, you never treated me as lesser because I needed help. You never made me feel like asking for assistance was defeat. That's rare in military culture. That's rare in general. You were never broken, Ethan says. You were injured, there's a difference. Broken suggests unfixable. You were always fixable, you just needed the right approach and willingness to do difficult work, which you had in abundance. Vela smiles. I spent my entire adult life as Commander Vela, the feared, the respected, the effective. I built my entire identity on being above others, on commanding rather than cooperating. Losing my legs stripped that identity away completely. I was terrified that without it, I was nothing. And now, Ethan asks, now I'm discovering that being Vela without the commander title might actually be better, she admits. I'm teaching, helping others, making music again. I'm building relationships based on mutual respect rather than hierarchy. I'm learning to stand beside people rather than above them. She looks at Ethan directly. You gave me new legs. But what you actually gave me was a new perspective. That strength isn't about dominance or invulnerability. It's about resilience and willingness to be vulnerable enough to heal. That's something I never would have learned if you'd just given me functional prosthetics and sent me back to my old life. Years later, when Vela writes a memoir about her journey from decorated commander to veterans advocate, she dedicates it to the human engineer who gave me not just new legs, but a new life. She describes the 6 months of reconstruction not as medical procedure, but as profound transformation. Learning to be vulnerable, accepting help, discovering identity beyond military service. Ethan continues his work making advanced prosthetics accessible across species. Vela's case becomes a landmark example of what's possible with hybrid technology and patient-centered care. But more than the technical achievement, their story becomes an example of how healing requires more than physical reconstruction. It requires someone willing to see past injury to potential,